there is a survival that you need to do for the first 5 years of a business. And the recurring business, as Gary said, is very important. And there's ups and downs it's cyclic, and the things that are not cycled are the ones that are having recurring revenue. So Gary was very adamant that we should work on technology and helping companies make some automation of some sort. Remember, this was 1995. Everybody basically had just the bare minimum desktops.
Welcome to the Break Free Podcast. I am your host, David Mancella. As you may know by now, we've been interviewing incredible people that are changing this world for a better place through their enterprises. And today we have two exceptional entrepreneurs with us, Sarah and Gary. Welcome to the show.
Nice to be here. Thank you for having us.
Hello. So let's start one by one. Sarah, what's your full name? Where do you live and what do you do for a living?
My name is Sarah Sajedi. I'm a co-CEO and CTO of ERA Environmental Consulting or ERA Environmental Software Solutions. Live in Montreal and pleased to be here.
Wonderful. And it's your turn, Gary. Full name, where do you live and what do you do for a living?
Yeah, so Gary Vegh here in Montreal, Canada. And I'm working on the research part of the business, the regulatory changes in the industry, changes with environmental impacts, regulatory from governmental bodies, and one of the co-founders of the company with Sarah Sajedi.
That's wonderful. I was excited to make this interview because in my corporate life, when I became the leader of software for one of the largest laboratories in Canada, we did a lot of environmental studies. So we created environmental testing to supply to companies like Conestoga Rovers, for example. And now that I found you guys that are actually a software company that deals with the environmental issues, it's just fantastic. My memories are so beautiful to have the privilege to have worked in the environment that you guys work. So who had the idea at the beginning of creating this company?
Well, actually, this company started as a consulting firm. And the idea was Gary had all these interesting ideas about how to help the environment. And when he was working for his bosses, they weren't very receptive. So I encouraged him and I said, why don't you start your own company? Because sometimes you can be more impactful when you do so. And that's who started the company, Gary.
So it was you, Gary, it was your idea. Tell me, were you in software or just in environmental science?
So I was in the environmental side. But with the regulatory changes in the United States, mainly the Clean Air Act amendments in the early 1990s, was going to have industry have to do lots of record-keeping reporting because of different air permits that mainly the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, was placing on industry. So I spoke to Sarah about it. I was working at a consulting firm at that time in North Carolina. And I was telling her that, this is just the beginning. Once these companies have these permits and they have to do record keeping, how are they going to manage the data? So I was talking to her that, we should use technology to help manage the data. And that's how we got on the idea of actually looking at software to help with the regulatory changes.
That is wonderful. So this is in the 90s. How long ago was this?
This was in 1994, 1995. The Clean Air Act amendments came out early 1990s in the United States. So to actually comply was in the early mid 90s that companies actually started having the permits and then all of the record keeping requirements that were part of these permits that they were obtaining from the government.
This is beautiful, and you can tell how many years have gone by. I remember in 1994, I was graduating with my second degree of computer science, and Windows 98 obviously wasn't out yet.
Yeah.
And we were working on mainframes back then, and then we started working with client-server technologies. Just about that time, we were beginning to create client-server technologies. The internet was a scientific project that was taking a lot of speed from the government into universities. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
We
So
didn't
opening
go
up a
cloud-based.
software company back then it was not easy.
No,
Yes,
you're
sir.
right.
So, in order to do anything in software, you have to actually have knowledge of the industry. So where we started was a lot of consulting and seeing the need. So from 1995 to 98, 99, we were doing consulting, helping to help us understand the requirements. Because if you can't just go out there and start building a software without technical knowledge, business logic, requirements. So the need was there, but understanding the needs came from doing the work and actually doing the permitting, seeing the requirements that the government puts, and translating that into how can it be calculated. First, we started on a desktop because, believe it or not, everybody wanted to go web from our end, but the VB.NET was in beta version. And when we tried it, it didn't work at the beginning beta. And we had to wait until 2002, 2003. So meanwhile, we were in a desktop or server-based version. And then at 2003, as soon as VB.NET 1 was deployed, that's when we actually went to the web. And that was the best move that we made, because technical support, the installation, the thing that it takes when you have thousands and thousands of clients installing your software, it chews up so much money and time. But when you're on the web, it's a whole different ballgame. And that time there was no Azure, there was no cloud services. So we actually built our own building to create a hosting environment. And from 2003 to 2008-9, we were actually doing our own hosting. But then we found out, hey, it's much cheaper to go to the cloud. And of course, we shut down all of that and moved to the cloud version, Azure and so on and so forth.
It's beautiful that you mentioned that. And computer science is my passion. I run a consulting firm that writes custom software for my clients, right? And I just want to clarify, because this is a business podcast. I have a technical podcast called Leaders in Technology, which I would love to talk to you guys about. But just for the audience, when we talk about the web and the cloud, the only difference is where are the computers hosted, the servers hosted that are providing the solutions for the people. So before the cloud existed, all we had is big servers in a server room, and everybody that wanted to host a website, they need to have their own server. Then the cloud idea came out, and basically when we talk about cloud, all we're talking about is these massive companies that have the same servers you and I used to have. But now you can just rent the service of the server instead of owning the server, so that we no longer have to worry about replacing parts or making sure that it's up and running 24/7. A lot of headaches went away. But it's exactly the same thing, just in a huge environment hosted by somebody else.
Exactly. I mean, the SaaS solution it's more reliable because it has the backups and backup generators. One of the problems we had a backup generator, but it was only good for a few hours. In order to get even more sophisticated one of it would be too expensive and not affordable. So hosting yourself or being hosted by one of the providers, larger providers, it's really no difference. It's still a SaaS solution, but it's a cost saving if you, at least in our case, it was cost saving.
Wonderful. Sarah, how did you meet Gary? Or Gary, sorry for the I'm Spanish. So
actually,
it's hard for me to
you said
names.
you're a software person. Even though we are owning a software company, both of us are chemists.
Mm-hmm.
So we met at school. I was finishing my bachelor's, and I was in the middle of my bachelor's, and he was finishing his bachelor's, and we met, and then he finished his master's after that, and so did I. And now we're doing both our PhDs, actually. Went back to school after.
Really?
Yeah.
Tell me about that. Like, what would prompt you to actually do your doctorate at this time, having so much success?
You know, the need to make a difference. So my topic is environmental related, and I'm working on water bottles and the microplastics in water bottles. So it's totally separate but it goes back to our roots being environmental people. Though I have an aptitude for software design and love it, and I really feel like there has to be a marriage between sciences and software, because sciences hold all the business requirements when it comes to technical softwares, and programmers are holding the key to actually making it automated, accuracy increase, speed, and reproducibility, reduction in errors and everything. And being in Excel sheets and all that is just not so reliable. So believing in technology made us a very successful company, being a front runner in what we do.
That's beautiful. And you're so right. So to give you a little bit of my background, so I grew up as a computer scientist. I started writing software when I was 15 years old. And this is in the 80s, right? 1984, right. 85. So you know what I mean, right? It's not the same thing as now. Like, so I had 2 computer science degrees and passionate about science and business. So I had a minor in business, actually in a managerial accounting. And I attribute that the Lord gave me a beautiful grandfather who was a chartered accountant that told me, I know you love computer science, but you need to apply it to something. So make sure you get a separate degree in a business-related field. Mm-hmm. So I did managerial accounting. I did like 8 accounting courses in college, and thanks to that, my business thrives because I know how to read. I know how to read managerial statements of work, and I know how to. I never do it, but I know how to keep a company profitable. I know what cash flow means versus actual profits, little things that you think is not relevant, but it's very relevant. I have many friends that have gone bankrupt because they didn't know the difference between profits in a spreadsheet and cash flow. Right?
Very important.
I keep telling people, for me, profits is what the government uses to tax you, and cash flow is what you have left in the bank.
And they're not the same, for sure.
But when I became the leader for this large laboratory, now it's a multinational organization. They were bought over many times. Now it's a large international organization. I was very afraid because I knew nothing about chemistry, but I was very good at business and technology. So when I became a leader there, turns out that one of my senior developers, he had a master's in computer science and he had a bachelor's degree in chemistry. So I will grab him all the time to my meetings because all these PhDs in chemistry started talking about all these things that I never knew. So he will whisper in my ear what they meant because he was super introverted. But thanks to him, I was able to do a good job. So I get your point, Sarah.
I had to take, when I started my bachelor's, my brothers were encouraging me to go to computer science because they're all engineers. And I wanted to go to my way, which is sciences and chemistry. And but I took a lot of programming courses, and that really helped thinking about the logic. And you and I have something in common. My father was an accountant as well, and it was understanding. I always say the numbers tell you a story. So when you work on data and data analysis and building software, you are trying to tell a story through reports and through outputs and analyzing the data. And it tells you if we're emitting too much and we're polluting the atmosphere, the numbers of VOC or chemicals that are ozone depleting. If we don't keep accounting, and funny stories, a lot of times people ask, what do you do? And I tell them we're like accountants, but we're environmental accountants. We do reporting and quantifying similar that you do your taxes. All the factories and places that they produce something, they have to report to the government accounting of their emissions and what they're polluting. So actually, we're environmental accountants. And they laugh because they understand what's accounting and what's taxes.
Mm-hmm.
So in when you do your taxes, you pay tax fees. And believe it or not, when people do accounting of their environmental reporting, they do also pay fees to the government based on what they pollute. And then the government tries to regulate them. So it works very much like taxes and accounting.
It's beautiful. And I'm so intrigued to see how this relationship started. I mean, running your own business is the hardest thing you can do in the world. Honestly, that's why there's very few entrepreneurs and a lot of employees, and that's by design. I mean, running your own business. So I almost went bankrupt when I decided to run my own business right after college. I thought, I'm going to write software for people, and here I am, a junior software developer with no experience. Nobody wanted to trust me. So I ended up selling computers to make ends meet. And to make the long story short, after 2 years, I almost went bankrupt. I was so blessed that I could sell the business for the debt that I had. And I got a real job as a developer. So it took 10 years later for me to actually have the enough knowledge and wisdom to say, okay, I'm going to try again. And now being in business for 18 years. You guys have been in business for how long now?
Over 28 years.
Wow. So you must be doing something spectacular.
So something you mentioned is that running a business, like it's not easy, right? So what we did is, Sarah mentioned about the consulting. So in consultancy, you are going after projects, bidding, you win the project, you work on it, you finish it, and while you're working on the project, you have to be pursuing more work, right? Because if you finish all the projects, then you have no more work, right? So how the software helped us is that because with software you have a license, now we're doing leases, and you have reoccurring revenue. It provided us the business continuity because now you have a reoccurring revenue stream to support the business. Where in projects, if you have to keep chasing the work and you're not sure, sometimes you may not win the project, right? It happens.
An economy happens.
Or the economy or COVID hits.
Gary and I have been through several crashes. 2008, I think 2011, 12, something. At least we've gone through 3 cycles of it.
But not our crash. She's talking about the COVID, economy.
COVID type economy going way up. At one of them, I remember in a whole year, if we didn't have our recurring revenue, we would have gone bankrupt. We only made $100,000 in free new sales. Nobody was buying anything. Everything was frozen. And our recurring revenue and a little bit of a line of credit allowed us to carry through and don't fire anybody. We actually took a pay cut, Gary and I, to make sure that we didn't lose any of our employees. Through COVID, we went on the cloud, and it's, like we now, everybody works from home, as you can see in my background and all that. So I won't expand too much on it, but, surviving the anomalies in financial is very difficult. So that's why you have to be careful, especially if you're not backed by VCs. You need to be very strong and be able to have a good financial planning, as you said, and cash flow in order to make sure your employees feel secure where they work.
Sarah, you touched a great point, and this is one of the reasons why I'm still alive. One of the advices that I got from a mentor of mine, a senior business owner, he said, when you have money in the bank, go and ask for a loan, ask for a line of credit. Because when you go and ask when you don't need it, they will not give it to you. But when they see a lot of money and a lot of sales, they are gladly to give it to you. And I did that, and in I think it was 2013. Yeah, 2013, I experienced a big crash in my business, and it allowed me to stretch and keep going, right? Just one little advice, right?
It's a true advice. We were given similar advice, and we've managed to put like at least a third of our, so we can have 3, 4, 5 months backup. And you always have to have your as they call it, little nest egg and line of credits. And you're 100% right. Somebody else told us the same thing. Ask for money or credit line when you're in good shape and they want to give it to you, not when you actually need it. So very true.
So it takes a little bit of humbleness to actually take advice and apply it, right? And one of the common denominators on my podcast, I've been doing this for over 3 years. We have many people, successful people like you guys interviewed, and the common denominator is the level of humility, of humbleness, so that they know that they know everything, so they can apply the advice they get. It's so fundamental, isn't it? Yeah. Gary, how was that move from North Carolina to Montreal? I mean, North Carolina compared to Montreal is night and day in culture and in weather specifically.
Right. Well, we're native Montrealers. So what got us back here is family, mainly. And also the talent pool in the United States. If you remember the Y2K, how it was so difficult to get anybody in related computer industry programming, And so I think Montreal serves as a great geographical location because we have so many immigrants coming to Canada and, 4 major universities. So it provided us a talent pool that we were kind of missing. The weather doesn't bother us that much because we're outdoor people. We don't keep inside in the winter and stay bundled up. We'll get out and do cross-country skiing, downhill. We'll go walking. It's we just enjoy the seasons. So you're right. It was a big change. But because we're originally from Montreal, Canada, it wasn't too difficult. But family was the main one. We wanted to be close to the family and have our children grow up close to the family, basically. Grandparents, yes.
But we moved down to Florida and then North Carolina and became U.S. citizens and stayed there for a while and started the company there. It was needed, and U.S. gave us a very great start, and it was I believe the U.S. move helped us to initiate our company. Starting a company is not easy, and the opportunities that where we were and the regulatory that the United States applies and the enforcement they do and the care they're giving, it really was a driver for us being able to create this business, and we're very grateful for that.
That's for sure, and I can see that impact. I mean, nothing wrong with Canada, but when you start servicing the USA, the amount of business that you can have there is just, it's incredible, right? I actually had to open a business corporation because I had General Electric Energy as my client, So, Fortune 100 company, and they would not deal with me if I didn't have a corporation in the US. So now I have a US corporation. So my US clients, I service them from the US corp, which is another level of, taxation and all that. But yeah, our big brothers down south, they don't they say that we're the biggest trading partner with the US?
We are.
Yeah, we are. And there's a great opportunity for young people. Sometimes you need to go where you need to go in order to get the jobs you need. When we graduated, our professors very saddened that we had to leave, but I told them, look, if I stay here, at that time it was a crash of one year or another. There was a lot of jobs that wasn't in Montreal anymore. And say, if I stay here, I can't work in my field. If I move, going to get experience in my field, and then hopefully we'll come back one day. And we did. So the fun part is we actually brought jobs back. So you need to go where the job is, and you need to actually apply yourself and use what you've been trained for. You go to school to learn a trade, and you learn something. If to apply it, you have to go where the job is sometimes. And this is what happened to us. We had to go where the job was. And once we got experience and started the company, it was time to come home and be with the parents and grandparents.
It's beautiful. That's another key element of a successful business owner. They will do whatever it takes to be successful. For you guys meant to move to the States, a foreign country, despite the fact that we're very similar, it's a very different country. Even the culture is completely different, right? And then you were able to start working on your field, and then you were able to build this amazing company. For me, I moved to Canada in 1991 from Guatemala with one computer science degree. When I landed in Canada, nobody will give me a job because back then they will never validate schooling out of Canada. So what did I do? I became proficient in English first. So it took me a few years to really have the English level to go to college. And then I went back to college. And then I see so many people that come to this country, doctors driving taxis. And I'm like, why? Like, if you look at the life that you have in this world, 5 years, 6 years of schooling is nothing compared to the blessings that you are going to get, especially if you're already trained in the profession that you have, right?
Yeah. And that's a really sad part, because a lot of them, they feel like, I don't want to go back to school, but sometimes that's what it takes. And, they lose the opportunity. They're very smart people. But if you don't do that secondary degree, you lose the opportunity to engage with your talent in the given country.
For sure. What a beautiful story. Tell me, how do you figure out writing your software as a service instead of consulting? How do you actually went into that transition? And I tell you this because I'm a software consulting company. I finally have a software as a service business where it's called the core. So we have a core product that people can subscribe on a monthly basis that will save them up to 70% of their new software project. But it took me 15 years to figure it out. I was trying to build software as a service with different products, and all of them failed. But this one is finally succeeding. But I always remembered, for me, a software project is hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then like, okay, I'm going to sell a license for $200 a month. It wasn't exciting for me. How do you make that transition? Because I know consulting, you get the money a lot faster and a lot more money in a short period of time.
So there is a survival that you need to do for the first 5 years of a business. And the recurring business, as Gary said, is very important. And there's ups and downs it's cyclic, and the things that are not cycled are the ones that are having recurring revenue. So we started, Gary was very adamant that we should work on technology and helping companies make some automation of some sort. Remember, this was 1995. Everybody basically had just the bare minimum desktops. And the internet was just starting. It was like a dial-up and so on and so forth. So it was not like a big thing there that to go software business, it was very not a mainstream, put it this way. But desire to automate pushed us to create the first version, but there was a need. It was driven by need from the governmental regulations, and actually industry went to the university in North Carolina and asked them to build the software. But after 3 years, they weren't really able to deliver anything. Meanwhile, we were talking to our clients about initiating a software, and one of them was on a board of that software in the university. So he called me up and he said, Sarah, we have this software, but we can't finish it. It's a good idea. It already has clients, but university can't complete it. Now we are taking bids on seeing who can take the software and finish it and host it and continue taking care of it. So we put our bid in, and we won the contract. So we got our first 6,200 clients through this cooperative work with the university and the associations, because woodworking industry in North Carolina is very big and they were being heavily regulated. Mm-hmm. The thing is that all of a sudden we had a crash because most of the industry walked into China and Far East, and they closed the shop. And that's when we would have gone under if we didn't diversify. So from being the first 3 to 4 years just in the wood industry, we had a choice: either close shop and be done with it, or diversify. And we invested a lot of money in diversification, going on the cloud, expanding our business. And now we have automotive, we have aerospace, we have 30 different industries using the software that initiated in the wood furniture industry. So, it's a success story, but it took a while.
So if I can add to this, David, is that when we started looking at cloud software and learning lesson that if you're a one industry business, you're at risk, we decided that looking at the chemical level, the commonality across all these manufacturing processes is chemicals. Whether you are building a big ship in Seattle, the west coast of the United States, or you're making a tablet in Philadelphia, there are chemicals, different, of course, quantities, but they all have chemicals behind it. So we decided that if we start at a commonality across the industry, we could service multitude of processes, industries, regulations, and not just North America, globally, because we're looking at the chemical with the smallest increment. So for the software, what makes it super interesting, Sarah could maybe expand on it, is that we are a single cloud platform that's multi-user, single tenant. We do not have different...
multi-tenant.
Multi-tenant, but I'm saying single... She knows the lingo better than I do.
One multi-tenant, instance, multiple tenants, yeah.
With a single platform, so that it allows us to not have to do versioning, customization. We can customize the user interface depending on the need of the industry and the regulation and even the facility and the company, right? But in the back end, you're looking at the base, which is the chemical information, you see? So that's how we're able to do this, because you mentioned 100,000, and that's, tipping the iceberg for programming, development. Now the cost is probably in the millions of dollars, right? How can you afford to have a software, charge an annual fee, and stay in business? How can you pass that on to the clients?
And if I may expand a little bit, so this is the part of business that I derive it, but Gary made a really good point, is that the design of the software is one of the reasons we have survived. A lot of people offer programming and customized software. Customized software is great for very narrow scope. The problem is that maintenance of it long term and it becomes legacy. Upgrading it, updating it, debugging it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars every year. And most people, after they've invested $500,000 to $1 million at the beginning, they just don't want to spend that type of money. And really it becomes very difficult, and it's more cumbersome than anything. So the design that I did for this being multi-tenant, but it has a blockchain backend. I don't know if you realize blockchain has, each client has their own databases. So the design we did was very innovative. All the larger clients, because we have Fortune 100 companies using this software, and they would never want to have their data in somebody else's database. So when the traditional multi-tenancy goes with one database, everybody shares, and you logical separation. But we actually give people multi-tenancy. Above and beyond that, we give them the security of a single tenancy data safety. So their data is sitting on separate databases, and each one, they're the owner, and they can take care of their own data, and security of it is high. But the front end is shared, so the cost of maintenance, cost of upkeeping with regulations, cost of building reports, all that really goes down. And that's how we've survived the industry, because it is very difficult. Most custom programming, it's hard to maintain long term.
Yeah, and especially if I know a lot about that. That's my business, and especially if that's what I tell my new clients, 80% of my leads, I tell them, go buy this software or go buy that software or go subscribe to this. And so the 20% is the one that it doesn't exist. So most of the time, the platforms we build become a SaaS company because of that. So it's brand new innovation that we're building, right? To give an example, we did an AI software for a company that will import raw materials from China. During COVID, from $4,000 per container, it went up to like $25,000 per container to do the shipping. So we built AI-based software that will predict the future of how much material their clients were going to order, so that it was self-learning. So we were able to actually maximize the shipping containers to lower the cost, and that actually saved their company. But now the owner said, if I can do this for a shipping container with rubber, that's what they were importing, I can do this for everything. So now they even do it to ship kitchen cabinets. He became a SaaS company that happens to know how to do logistics, right? So you're completely right. And people are hearing me. If you have an idea for a software program, there is a 90% chance that it's already there as a service, and it's going to cost you 1/10 of the time. If not, come see me. I'll build it for you, and then you become the SaaS company.
Yeah, and honestly, if you have the idea to make it a SaaS company, that's great. That's the way to go. The thing is that if you just building it, so companies, very large companies, automotive, would say, I'm a big guy, I can do this, I'll build my own software. But nowadays, all their IT says no. You go buy off the shelf and have them hosted, because the cost of maintenance, hosting, and everything else is so high when you're single tenant, that even very Fortune 100 companies don't want it, but they prefer, if you have the knowledge to build that key software, share it with others, you are doing yourself and others a favor. And of course, building those softwares is not cheap, but it's worth it when you do it for a lot of people.
Right. And that's why most of our clients stay with us. So the ones that need us, we actually do the hosting on Amazon or Azure, and we actually do the maintenance for them so that their cost is still very low, because we're experts on doing that, right? But like I said, most of our clients become SaaS companies at the end, software as a service companies. Another great thing that I need to point out, like, remember this podcast is about sharing your wisdom, and it's incredible, and thank you for that. The architecture decision that you made when you went into the cloud and you decided to have separate data stores per client is brilliant. One of the largest projects we ever did was an accounting software for the school industry in North America. Now it's international. And they came up with this idea to save money. They even wanted to actually share the database. And I said, no, because of if you, especially with money, like accounting data, I said, if you go to a large enough institution, they will say, I want privacy on my data. So I actually architected it the same way that you guys architected it. So it's the same front end, the same middle tier, the same back end, but different database underneath. So they could actually even run it in the local system if they wanted. Now, we built this from 2005 to 2009, so it was revolutionary. You guys did it even before I did it. So where do you get all these incredible smart ideas?
Honestly, it's customer driven. You have to listen to your clients. And if you're aiming, like Gary's a visionary of the company, he always says, okay, we're going to go toward automotive. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And when I listen and thinking about the larger clients, and they all at that time was like, I want to host my own software. And so if you had a shared database, you could never win these people. And that drove us to thinking about, okay, they want the data separate, but they're not saying they don't want the front end separate. So that's how the conclusion and the architecture came about, was because need driven and security driven, and being able to allow them to do what they need to do, but keep it inexpensive and keep it affordable. So environmental is very difficult. The money is not as fluid as other industries. It's a very competitive, it's hard to budget. Most budgets go to development and safety and other things. Environmental gets the lower level of the, so we had to be very competitive. And anything that you develop, any project, you should really listen to the needs. You cannot develop a product, whether it's software or anything else, without having end users that tell you what their needs are. And you cannot design a good output without a good input from who is going to use it.
Beautiful. What a beautiful way to start a company and to keep it running and keep surviving, because when we think we're thriving, we think it's never going to end. And then when we think that we're dying, we think it's never going to end. But both are not true, right? So you need to be able to do the ups and downs, right?
Exactly.
One last question. It's been an amazing conversation. We're almost 45 minutes in, and I want to respect your time. You can raise your hand or you can both answer this question, but I think it's going to be beautiful for you and for the audience. If you had access to a billboard in front of the busiest highway on earth, what would you write in it?
I know what I would. Gary, you want me to go first?
Sure.
Okay. I have for the billboard, please respect our planet.
Wow. That's beautiful. How about you, Sarah?
Education. Getting education allows you to have that opportunity to be innovative. And knowledge brings awareness, whether it's environmental or any other. But working through and learning and being vigilant about, understanding the environment and the needs that are there is very important. But it all starts with education. Getting higher education is freedom. And we wouldn't be here if we didn't have our education. We couldn't understand this topic to tackle it. So I would say for any young people out there, it's really important to focus. And, sometimes you don't, when I became a chemist, I didn't see where I was going with it. And it sort of fell into place slowly by itself. But just having the education helped us to slowly work our way through and get where we are today.
That's beautiful. Sarah, Gary, thank you so much for being in this show. This is your home. I would love to interview you also on Leaders in Tech. I think you have a lot to share as far as technology is. and that other audience deserves to listen to you guys, because it's the completely different audiences, right? This channel is for business owners. The other one is for technical people that want to become leaders, and you guys are both great leaders in technology. I'm astonished to your wisdom in both business and technology. Tell me, where can people find you online? Where can they find your services if they want to purchase your SaaS product?
Well, we're on LinkedIn, of course, but we also have our own website, www.era-ehs.com. ERA stands for ERA, Environmental Risk Assessment, and EHS is Environmental Health and Safety. So era-ehs.com, that's where you can find us directly. But if you look at environmental software, we pop to be the top. So it's
wonderful. Gary, Sarah, thank you so much for being in the show. God bless you, and I'll see you on the next time. Cheers.
Thank you for
David.
having us.
Have a super nice afternoon.
And a great podcast. The Break Free podcast is awesome. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Bye, David.
That's all for today's episode of the Break Free podcast. Head on over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. Starting your own business can be tough, but it doesn't have to be. Visit davidmansilla.com to pick up a copy of the #1 international best-selling book, Breaking Out of Corporate Jail. Expand what you consider to be possible and reach your full potential. And join us on the next episode.